Great morning, great morning, great morning. I am Nicole D. Jones, and I am just happy and grateful for another day. I'm happy and grateful for life. I say it every week. I'm going to continue to say it. I don't take days for granted. I don't take life for granted. I don't take you for granted. I'm going to remind you that you are healthy, you are wealthy, you are prosperous. Everything your hands go to touch, it must, it shall, and it will manifest, prosper, and grow great things because you are great. Okay, you're created out of greatness. We're spirit with a soul wrapped in this flesh. Greatness is not the word perfect. Great, perfect, two different words. We're striving for perfection through this journey. Okay, Jehovah God never intended for us to walk on this journey perfect. But what he does expect, because he's a God of principle, no matter what we face, no matter what we go through, we have to believe that our precepts are predestined, that our precepts are preordained, that he thought of you, created you, and every day of your journey before he even created the earth. Before he put anything in place, he already knew who you were. He already knew the impact you'd have on this world. He already knew the gift that you are going to be in this journey. He already knew your portion. Man, he knew. All right. So you got to remember that. All right. You have to remember that. If you don't remember anything else from these morning mindset calls, remember that you're healthy. Remember that you're wealthy. Remember that you're prosperous. Remember that you are purpose. Remember that you are relevant. You are necessary. You are needed to your friends, family, loved ones, and enemies. All right. No one is exempt. The breath in you, no one else can breathe it, and no one else can give what you give. Listen. All right. Meal Prep Monday. Okay. Last week, I said self-deception is the worst deception to have. Now, the purpose of these Meal Prep Mondays is for you to be able to take what we're talking about and think about it through the week. So I don't know how many of you all were on the call, listened to the call, and was willing to look at yourself. But anything that I share with you guys, I'm doing. Okay. These morning mindset calls are not pre-thought of this, none of that. I'm literally sharing with you what I'm doing in my own journey because I believe and I know I'm spirit with a soul wrapped in this flesh. And all I want to do is for us to get to our true self, because the reality is we walk more in our false self, and people don't even know who we are because we don't know who we are. Okay. So this is the thing, self-deception. So I took this week, last week, and I really focused on places that I deceive. I'm in self-deception. I mean, like I told you, we all are deceivers of ourselves in some way and somewhere, because all of us, this life has life, and in all of us, this journey has brought something good, bad, or indifferent. All right. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Now, trauma paralyzes us. So the reality is, if you experience trauma as a child, there's some parts of you that when that trauma or that whatever you went through at that time is triggered by something that happens, that 5-year-old self of you shows up because there's something there you haven't dealt with. Okay. So I'm 51, but the reality is, if you touch something in the right way, you might get that 10-year-old Nicole. Okay. But it's not always a bad thing. Listen, we can be self-deceived because of good things. Because at 10 years old, there was a Nicole, but at 10 years old, there was also a Coco. My grandmother she nicknamed me Coco. There's a reason, and there's a story behind the nickname. As anyone who has a nickname, there's a reason and a story. And the story ain't bad. So in my spoiled self, there's self-deception. Okay. So when we're self-deceiving, it doesn't always have to come from a bad place. It could come from a good place. It's great that I was spoiled, but it's terrible that I became a brat in it. All right. So I took last week, I did a lot of self-reflection. All right. Now, where I chose to focus was my relationships, my personal abilities and achievements, my health, and my finances. All right. Also dealt with my self-management in time. Okay. Now, listen, if we're true to ourselves, if we're willing to be vulnerable and see these places, it don't feel good. All right. Last week, because when you choose to look at yourself, you choose to open your eyes and remove veils that have been comfortably placed, that we've placed comfortably over our lives about ourselves. So when you start looking at your true self and looking at the spirit of you and how you were truly created and your original DNA, okay? Spirit with soul wrapped in this flesh. The reality is this flesh part don't line up with the spirit part. So I had to first start looking at relationships. And the first thing I had to own is how many red flags I've chosen to overlook. Okay. So relationally, be it if it's with your spouse, be it if it's with your children, your friends, your coworkers, relationship that you have with people. The first thing when you're doing self-reflection, because we're dealing with our self-deception, we're not looking at these things to look at the other party. Now, you got to look at the situation. The situation includes you and someone. But when you're able to point the finger at what you see, you got to immediately point it back. This is self-reflection. And you got to be true to yourself. Why you allowed yourself to deal with it, why you continue to allow yourself to deal with it, or why you dealt with it before if it's a past relationship. Okay? Then when you get to this place, you got to be willing to dig out the root. All right? So in the relationships, I had to recognize red flags that I see as a constant. All right? In relationships I have now, in relationships I have previously, there's a constant, there's a pattern when we're honest with ourselves. We all have stuff that are patterned in our life. So I had to take a good look at those red flags, and then I had to figure out in me, one, why I continue to deal with them, because you're drawn to them for a reason. Whatever draws you to those red flags or allows you to stay in those places is something in you. So I had to look at and get to the root of, and I ain't all the way in the root now because it's uncomfortable. You know, when you start dealing with yourself, it's very uncomfortable. So anyone who knows me, if you ain't heard from me in a week or my conversations were short, it has nothing to do with you. It is all about when you start dealing with yourself, you like, all right? You get quiet because you have to have time to reflect on these things. And some things are very hurtful. When you start going to the truth of you, it don't feel good. All right. So you got to figure out, you have to be willing to look at these things, figure out, like I said, relationally for me, I had to understand why I, choose to deal with red flags. And they were good intentions. Sidebar. Can we stop thinking that we can fix people? Because we have a hard time fixing ourselves. All right. So when you think of relationships, I had to start looking at that. Good intentions, heart is good. I want the best for you. I want the best for, the people that have been in my life. But the reality is I'm not at my best. So I allowed myself to put more of the energy into my relationships instead of putting it into me. Now, The good thing is when you do healthy self-reflection, you're able to, it will birth out a submitting and humble posture, not arrogant and proud. Because everything I just said, if I'm not in the right posture, I could come out feeling very like, well, you know what? I was doing them a favor. And because I was trying to help them, shame on them. It's their loss, not mine. No, it's all perspective. So when you're doing these self-reflections, what I learned and why I want to share it this week, because by faith, I believe that if you didn't do it, you will start doing it. Because the only way that you can be the best version of you unapologetically is you got to deal with you. Okay? No one else can be you and do you. So I had to start looking at it, and I had to own my parts. And why is it that I put so much energy into someone else fixing them and not willing to fix me? Led to the next thing I had to deal with myself. It was my personal abilities and my achievements or lack thereof. Because I've achieved a lot. I have a lot that I've done that I'm not even worthy of when you look at it on paper. The places that my job, things that I'm able to encounter, I'm not worthy of it when you look at the things of the world, like my job, the level of education that I should have gone through college, I have not fulfilled yet, and still I hold the position and have had the position for a while. Okay, I had to start looking at personal abilities and achievements or lack thereof. Why do I overestimate or underestimate myself? And when you start realizing that you don't have a good view of yourself, you'll then begin to understand. That's why you pick up projects through your relationships and through your people or through things you want to fix and help, because there's a void in you. But you deserve everything you're trying to pour out. Okay? So I had to go through that. And then I had to go through my own little crying, like, Nicole, you are loved. You're worth loving. In spite of you blacking out. Ming Lee rises, and Ming Lee, I gotta suppress Ming Lee. But at the end of the day, I'm still worthy of love because I was created out of love, to be loved, and to give love. See, all this from self-reflection, all right? Because it allowed me to see how I've deceived myself and minimized me. Now, again, it's all perspective. You've got to be willing to look at you in a way that, because we're not doing this to beat ourselves up. We're not doing this to go into self-sabotaging. We are doing this because we are who we are, and we are worthy. We are victorious. We are the head and not the tail. It's not one person is and one person isn't. No, we all are. And when we can really get to a place where we can identify that for ourselves, we can help other people, and we're not bitter and resentful in doing it. We can be a servant. We can serve. Not even looking for something back, because we know what's for us is for us, and it's going to elevate. Our capacity will grow. Ooh, Lord. All right. So I had to look at these things, right? I had to look at my emotional state. Okay. I had to look at the emotions that I go through. I had to acknowledge, as strong of a person as I am, as much as I believe I love the Lord, as much as I try to die to myself, I had to admit that I operate a lot in fear. Ooh, Lord. Okay. If I could never acknowledge that, I can never be fearless. And all right. Okay. So listen, why am I saying all this? I'm saying this because when we learn to do a self-reflection, and this is why I told you last week, Know who's there for you. You got to have your accountability, okay? Got to have your accountability. You got to be willing to share these things and be vulnerable with yourself so that that vulnerability, you'll allow it to spill over to your safe places. We were never created to do this journey alone. All right? We were never created to walk this journey guarded like this. If anything, was created to walk it like this. Humble, serve, submit. Okay? So when you're doing this, please hear me very clearly. I'm not asking you to pull up your dirty laundry so that you can be sad and hindered. No, you pull it up to allow your vulnerability to come so you go to the safe place that can help you wash your load. Okay? They'll wash your load. They're your clothes, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to start the machine for you. We're going to fold it together. To be the best version of you, we've got to do this. All right? To have fulfillment in this journey, we've got to do this. We got to fill our own love tank. We cannot continue to fill others' love tank more than our own. I told y'all before, the cup of you is supposed, the Holy Spirit pours into it so that your cup overflows. And then the ones around you, they're drinking out of the saucer, not from your cup. All right? So self-deception. We have to do the self-reflection. But I want you to understand that you're going to acknowledge it. Whatever it is you're dealing with in whatever category. All right? You got to be willing to go to the root cause of it. You've got to be willing and open in that vulnerable place to receive the external feedback. This is why you've got to make sure that you're sharing this process with the right one. And even if you don't know how to find the right one, be vulnerable with the Holy Ghost that's been left to lead, guide, and direct you. And then be filling your relationship right there with the Trinity so that when that person is sent to you, you'll know because your spirit will bear witness with it. The spirit of you will bear witness with the spirit that comes so that your soul will increase. Okay? And you gotta practice, self-compassion and self-love. All right? Like I said, we're not doing this to beat ourselves up. The inner me is my worst enemy. I ain't about to fight myself in this when I'm trying to do better and be better. All right? Then you gotta be willing to deal with the mind. And here's the thing. This is what, and you know, maybe this is why, I don't know, this is me, and I'm gonna stand on it till I take my last breath. All right? Mindset is, your mind is the only place you can be battled. So that's where we always gotta focus. Okay? Everything is about your mindset. Everything is about learning to shift your perspective. So note to yourself, that is the battlefield. So stop relying on your mind. Nicole, what you mean? Just what I said. We've got to let it click that we're battled in our mind. So you can't take every thought. You got to learn how to take those thoughts captive that are not going to glorify the greatness of who you really are, period. All right? So you got to have that. And then to heal, you have accountability and you set realistic goals, because whatever you come into knowledge of, you got this whole journey to work it out. But I shouldn't see you on your progress and your process and nothing's changed. And those changes don't rely on man to solidify it. This is why you have your accountability. Okay? So you got to be willing to own your stuff. You got to be willing to be vulnerable to yourself because you're worth it. You deserve it. All right. The beginning of the week is a little rough for a sister. I ain't gonna lie. Because when you start looking at yourself and you start looking at the not so pretty of you, when you start acknowledging the flaws, because we all have them, you cannot do it without being willing to take the next step. And that's digging from the root. Okay? Digging from the root. So, Meal Prep Monday, what do I want you to do? I want you to be willing to at least look at 2 places of yourself. It could be relationships. It could be your personal achievements, abilities. It could be your health, finances, your work and your career. Let's be real about where we're at, all right? Your emotional state. Be willing to look at your morals and your values. Because all of this we're doing because we're building our character, all right? As we build our character, we increase our capacity. We enlarge our capacity. As our capacity enlarges, our territory will show it, okay? So you've got to have these truths, all right? And even deal with your thoughts on your social perception. Where where we live now, who you are ain't based on how many followers you have. But it's just the time, all right? So even your social and how people perceive you, take the time to look at how much that matters to you. And when you realize that it does matter, ask yourself why. Deal with that, dig in that, okay? Because there's a lot that the prince of this air, who has the authority to play with you, is taking these different things, even with social media, okay? But he has no power because he's a defeated foe. We hand him the power, all right? Stop handing him the power. Okay, so Meal Prep Monday, I want you to do that. I had the flyer up. I think Jacinta put the link in the chat. The question I want to ask you is, have you met you yet? Have you met you, your true self, who you were created to be on this journey? If you haven't, I need you to meet me. September 19th and September 20th, all right? I'm hosting God's Cover Girls. It's going to be a transformational time. It's going to be an encounter with your original creator. It's going to allow you to know how to go back to your original DNA. VIP is filling up. I'm like, wow, VIP is going to be cut off when it's filled up. So make sure you get your tickets as soon as you can. Want to remind you to stay humble, to stay focused, and to stay positive, okay? Be the best version of you unapologetically, because no one else can do it. No one else can do it. And I believe that there is a pressing on me for us to really get our character together, because that's what's going to be left in this earth. You're going to be known by that, all right? When we can get our character, because our character is where our fruit is being produced from. And you're known by the fruit that you bear. So when you physically leave this journey, your fruit should continue to multiply, because that's how we've been created. Okay? So I am Nicole D. Jones. Hope that this wasn't too much. I thought I was going to air out my dirty laundry, but oh, praise be to the Father. He has some grace and mercy on me. But just know, when you're looking at yourself, the picture's not always pretty. It's not pretty. But the whole reason we're doing it is that we can shed those things off and we can be the best version of us unapologetically. All right? I want you to continue to have a fantabulous rest of the day. Smooches.